welcome to Office Hours. So normally, if you guys watch my show, I normally do a live show where I talk about health and nutrition and food and how to integrate it in your life in a wonderful way. And that show is called Summer Tomato Live. And that show requires a subscription, though. But every once in a while, I hold these open office hours just for everyone, where I just sort of talk about whatever recent news or whatever in the health scene, and just answer your questions. So that's the main reason I'm here, is to answer any health and nutrition questions you have, or chat about whatever. So the biggest news in the past week was that the USDA finally put out their new replacement for the food pyramid, which was pretty exciting. I was trying to get this this program working where I could show you a screen and I could have the little thing up there, but I failed at getting that working. Well, I had it working until I wiped my computer, and now it's not working properly. So if you want to see the new plate, it's called MyPlate. You can go to the website, shoot, one sec. Oh, it's choosemyplate.gov, and you can take a look at it there. Basically what it looks like is it's just, instead of being the standard like pyramid form, so we all grew up, we had the same basic pyramid for a long time, right? With the big thing of grains at the bottom and the tiny little fat oil thing at the top and everything else in between. And then the pyramid after that was this like ridiculous looking thing where it was like the lines were coming down like this instead of this way, and there were different levels, and there was some guy running up the side, and it was really, really unclear how that was supposed to represent food in any way. But this new one actually looks like a plate, which is pretty cool, and then it has this sort of little thing off to the side for dairy, which we can discuss. And just want to let you know, if you have any questions for me during the show, this is supposed to be interactive conversation. The best way to ask a question is to go and see, there's a little red button up on your screen that says ask a question. If you use that, then I can put it up on the screen and we can have a discussion about it. Otherwise, you can call in as well and we can have a face-to-face chat. But if you do call in, make sure you please use some headphones so that there's no feedback in the video. So that would be awesome. I kind of try to monitor the chat a little bit, but I can easily miss stuff that's going on in chat. So don't assume that I will see your question if you only ask it in chat. Anyway, so back to the MyPlate, food plate, right? So if you take a look at it, basically it's a big round plate like this, and it's cut in half, but it's not cut in quarters. So about half the plate, so exactly half the plate is fruit and vegetables, and the other half of the plate, it says it's for protein and grains. You know, if you look at the plate, it looks like about just over a quarter of it should be vegetables, and you know, a big sizable chunk is also fruits. And then it's sort of the opposite pattern for the grains and protein. It looks like the grains are a little bit bigger, a little bit more than a quarter compared to the protein. So it looks like, you know, they're recommending the bulk of your plate should be vegetables and grains with some fruit and protein. And they're not very specific about what protein is. But I guess we're to assume that it should be meat or some sort of vegetarian alternative, which I would assume would mean beans of some sort. And then off to the side, there's this little circle for dairy, which is actually pretty big. It's almost the same size as the fruit section. A couple things I like about the new plate. It's pretty straightforward and easy to read. I like that it looks like a plate. I like that you can, you know, sort of take that model and graph it directly onto something you're eating and be like, okay, this makes sense. Another thing I like is that there is an emphasis on fruits and vegetables. Saying that half your plate should be fruits and vegetables is pretty big change for the USDA. They've always told us either grains. They've basically always told us grains should be half our plate, and they've never really differentiated between processed and unprocessed grains. So basically they were saying like really, really bad food should be the bulk of your diet for a long time. So this is a big improvement on that front. I personally am I personally don't like that their fruits like take up any of the vegetable space at all. I personally would if I were redrawing the plate, and I might do it myself, but if I were redrawing the plate, I would have fruits where dairy is, sort of off to the side and in the corner. I wouldn't have dairy on there at all. And vegetables would take up the entire half in my perfect world. Regarding the other half of the plate, so grains and protein, I feel not that bad about it. It seems like a lot of the plate, but it's a little bit annoying how vague they were about protein. And also, they don't, fat used to be something that was a big deal to the USDA. They used to say, use limited fats and oils very sparingly. But they don't mention fat anywhere on this. Somewhere down in they have sort of a little commentary underneath the plate, and one of the recommendations there is that you should use low-fat or fat-free dairy products, which is totally not supported by the scientific evidence, so I don't know why they have that in there. And that's sort of the only mention of fat I see in any of this, which I think is kind of lame, because I think that fat is really important. I think it's underemphasized in our society and our nutrition. Everyone assumes it's bad and assumes that fat-free is better for you, which is totally not true. The data totally contradicts that. There are fats you shouldn't eat. Trans fat is really, really bad for you, and that's processed fat. So any vegetable oils that have been highly refined or hydrogenated are really bad for you. Some people think saturated fat is bad for you. I'm not so convinced. But I think that even if you're not going to talk about saturated fat, I would say that certain fats, such as the fats in fish, the omega-3 fatty acids, as well as the fats in olive oil and avocados and nuts, those are going to be your monounsaturated fats, your polyunsaturated fats. Those are essential parts of the diet. And that they're not on the plate at all, I think is really lame. And especially considering there's also this like random piece of dairy sticking off to the side, which nobody needs dairy. I have nothing against dairy, but I mean, remember 75% of the world is lactose intolerant, right? So, I mean, to be like, this should be part of your healthy diet, or like this is part of your ideal meal is what they're saying. They're not like, this is not like, this plate is not, it's not like what you could eat. This to them is saying it's your ideal meal. And I don't think dairy has any part in an ideal meal. I mean, it's a fine part, but it's not necessary. So I'm sort of feel the same way about grains. I mean, I like grains a lot, but you don't need them. A lot of people are gluten intolerant, and a lot of people I know don't eat grains at all, and they're very healthy. So, by the way, I'm having some green tea today. It's lovely green tea. So that's sort of my take on the plate. But that being said, I don't know how I would visually graph adding that fat onto there. Maybe I would, take a little piece off and say, this is where avocados, nuts, fish. But then the problem is it gets confusing because they have protein already in there, which that's confusing. The fact that they use protein, which is a nutrient and not a food, is a little bit confusing. So I would make a different plate that's a little more flexible. But I understand that it's difficult to create like a sort of one plate fits all. In fact, it's impossible. But if they are sort of trying to have the goal of helping as many people have the healthiest diet as possible, it could be worse. It could be better. So that's my take on it. What do you guys think? I see some people here saying they like the paleo plate better. I agree. I agree with Abigail in the chat that you miss whole grains too much if you're paleo. I just think that's sad. I don't have any nutritional argument about it, but I personally, I wouldn't want to not eat grains ever. And I think you can eat them and be perfectly healthy, and I know you can. So that's how I feel about the grain and paleo thing. I've talked about that a lot before. So if you are wondering why I'm sort of not answering that, just hop on YouTube and look at my other videos. It's YouTube/Daria Pino. Let's see. Let's take a question here. Awesome. So, is eliminating gluten, dairy, and fruit a good thing? If yes, can you elaborate on the reasons? I would love to do that. So I've talked about this a bit before in some old episodes of the show. And like I said, you can either subscribe on iTunes The show is called Summer Tomato Live, or you can go on my YouTube channel or just search on Summer Tomato and you can find old shows. But let's see. Are eliminating gluten, dairy, and fruit good? Okay, let's start with gluten. Eliminating gluten is awesome if you're gluten intolerant. Eliminating gluten for a healthy person can be beneficial because most people eat really bad. Most people eat a lot of processed grains and they're really bad for you. And generally gluten and processed grains are common. But if I don't worry about gluten, but I eat very little bread, maybe once or two times a week. So I think it can help a lot of people. I'm not at all surprised that a lot of people go on a gluten-free diet and feel better because generally they're eliminating like 80 to 90% of the processed crap they're eating. And so if you're forced to eliminate gluten, you're almost always going to improve your diet. And so that's, I think, why most people feel better. That being said, there are people with legitimate intolerances and legitimate problems with gluten. And for those people, absolutely, just cutting it out is a big help. And so unless you have a specific problem, I personally would just say try eating a diet of unprocessed foods before necessarily going all gluten-free, because I think that's a little bit unnecessarily restrictive if you don't need it. Eliminating dairy, same sort of thing. So some people are going to be very sensitive to lactose. Some people are sensitive to casein, which is the main protein in milk, and can benefit by cutting out dairy. Other than that, I see no reason to cut it out. I personally don't drink milk because I have a very mild lactose intolerance, but I do eat cheese and occasional ice cream and stuff like that, and I like it. I prefer organic because I have issues with the hormones that they give to dairy cows, and I don't think they're safe always. So I actually did a whole show on dairy, so if you want to go check that out, you should watch that. There's a lot of good information in there. You definitely don't need dairy. I don't think, there's reasons to not eat tons of dairy, but I think moderate amounts of dairy are fine, and you don't have to cut it out to be healthy. And fruit, I think fruit is great. I don't know why anybody would cut out fruit. There's actually, in my link post last Friday, so if you're worried about fructose, I'm assuming is what most people are worried about. There was a big scare about fructose. I did a whole show on that too. It was the sugar toxicity show. It was in office hours where I talked about whether or not fructose was dangerous. And from what I can tell, there's decent evidence that processed fructose is dangerous when it's taken out of fruit and put into food in the form of high fructose corn syrup. I've never seen any data that fruit is bad for you, and this was acknowledged even in the New York Times article that made everybody start thinking about this again. That the fructose in fruit itself has never been shown to be bad. I would say it's good. And there's a really great article I linked to on Friday in my For the Love of Food post. If you want to go back to Summer Tomato, just a couple blog posts ago from Friday, there was an article in there about fruit, and in it he my friend Richard, who wrote the article, cites a study of comparing fructose from fruit and how it impacts versus fructose not from fruit and how it impacts health. And it showed to be like, or maybe it was how it impacts weight loss. Basically, people who ate fruit lost more weight. So no, I think fruit's great, and I don't think you need to be scared of it at all. So I wouldn't necessarily eliminate any of those things, but if you're eating like a diet that doesn't have a lot of processed foods, you're going to be a lot healthier. So that's my recommendation there. That's a long answer. Thanks for that one. Just FYI, guys, if you ask more than one question using the Ask a Question button, it will delete the old ones. So it'll only show your most recent one. So if I haven't gotten your question yet and you want to ask another one, please wait until I address your first one first. Otherwise, I won't see it. So, somebody put in something that didn't make sense. I think about Doctor Who, but it wasn't a complete sentence. So I'm going to take this one. Let's see. Going back to the chat room. No problem, Sujit. So can I comment on eating eggs? I can. Eating eggs is delicious. The eggs are So eggs got a bad rap for a long time. The reason for that, and I've made videos about this as well. So if you search summer tomato for cholesterol, I talk a little bit about that. And also if you search summer tomato for eggs, I talk about this there as well. But basically eggs have a pretty high amount of cholesterol in them. And so the logic went, eggs are high in cholesterol. When you have high cholesterol, you might have heart disease. Therefore, eggs are bad. The problem with that logic is manyfold. The first issue is that dietary cholesterol, so that's cholesterol that you eat, is not the same as cholesterol that's in your body. Those are actually called lipoproteins. So LDL and HDL cholesterol, those are actually proteins that carry cholesterol around in your body. And the cholesterol you eat actually has very little impact on your cholesterol proteins in your blood. So there's that. There's never been any evidence that eating eggs increases your risk of heart attack, ever. So that is one thing. If you're worried about heart attack, you don't have to worry about eggs. Eggs do have a little bit of saturated fat, but like I said, they've never been associated with heart disease. I'm skeptical that saturated fats really plays a big role in heart disease. I think maybe a little bit, but I don't think it's that big. Actually, I really don't think so at all, but I don't think this hasn't been entirely worked out yet. But I would say that you have nothing to worry about with eggs, and they're really a great source of vitamins and protein, and they're delicious. And I really prefer fresh eggs, like the fresher the better. I think they perform better in the kitchen, and performance is important. So that's my take on eggs. Yeah. So let's see. This is a great question. So how would someone that was raised on fast food, which is sadly most of us, adjust their palate to be more healthy? So really quick, crispness, please ask your question in the ask a question button, because that's going to disappear. And your superfoods question also. Okay, so how would I adjust? Right, and James makes a good point. Starting with a healthy breakfast is great, but so let's sort of start at the beginning with the whole healthy eating thing. So basically, most of us sort of grew up in this sort of fast food, processed food culture and got very accustomed to food tasting a certain way. Once you've sort of opted out of that food system for a while, like I have, it's been a few years since I've really eaten that way, I can taste that flavor, like that like fake food flavor, like instantly now. I recognize it really well. But making the adjustment is hard because you grew up thinking that that was what was good. But part of the reason you thought that is, I'm going to guess, I mean, and this was true for me and almost everyone I've helped so far, that you don't actually know what healthy food tastes like. And the reason, but you think you do, and you think it tastes nasty, right? Because health food is always nasty, right? Like the healthy options at like McDonald's, or the healthy options pretty much anywhere, like at the Cheesecake Factory or whatever, like they're all disgusting. And the reason is because in order to make them like the healthy versions, they've taken the former USDA food pyramid, which was, of course, not actually healthy and wrong, and they cut out the fat, they cut out the salt. And when you start with really low quality food and you remove all the fat and salt and sugar, it tastes really bad. So the reason all that stuff is in there is to cover up the taste of bad food. And, that's sort of hard to understand until you've tasted real food. So my mind was totally blown the first time I went to the farmer's market in San Francisco. Like I was walking down, and I tell this story in my about section on my website, Summer Tomato. But basically I was like walking around the market, and it's beautiful. Everything smells good. You're like, wow, what is that amazing smell? And you're like, it's lettuce? Like, I didn't know lettuce could smell good. That's weird. Turns out it tastes good too when you get it like from a farm where it wasn't like shipped from Chile in the middle of winter in an ice box. And I saw some strawberries and they looked really good, and I was sort of making a beeline over to get strawberries, because most people like fruit. You know, when you're new to this stuff, like fruit sounds fine. It's the vegetables that you're not so sure about. So I was heading over to get this strawberry, and some woman is like standing there with this platter of red things with a fork, and she picks one and sort of shoves it at me, and I'm like, okay, cool. So I take one, thinking it's a strawberry sample, didn't even look at it, plop it in my mouth, and sort of keep walking. And sort of like, I take 2 steps and I just sort of freeze. And because I realized that she didn't actually hand me a strawberry, but for a second I thought it was a strawberry. It was a tomato. And it was just so sweet and so delicious that I was like, I totally forgot about the strawberries, and I went and bought 2 pounds of tomatoes because I'd never tasted anything like this before in my life. So for me, the easiest way to get off that sort of fast food diet was to just start making an effort to find, when I did bother to cook for myself, and I was like, okay, you don't have to switch like 100% of your meals all the time, but let's say, okay, this weekend I'm going to make a healthy dinner at home, or whatever, a healthy lunch or whatever. So you go out to the farmer's market and you just pick up some really good ingredients, and the first time you do it, it feels like a really big deal. You're like, it's like a lot of work. You don't really know where the farmer's market is. You get there and you realize you should have brought a big bag, and you forgot, and so you're carrying around all these little bags because you're a newbie. You've never done this before. And you get home and you're like, where does all this stuff go? How do I cook this? And, at first it's really overwhelming. So, I don't recommend it's almost impossible to go from sort of 0 to 60, cooking 100% healthy all the time. But I promise you that it gets easier. And if you just, make a habit of going to the farmer's market, you'll never forget your farmer's market bag anymore. And if you, make a habit of making tasty salads all the time, you won't have to think twice about what ingredients you need, or what utensils you need. You'll figure that out as you go, and you'll start to realize that those are the best meals you eat, and you won't want to eat the crappy ones anymore. Another thing you can do is, when you decide to splurge a little bit, instead of going to the Cheesecake Factory, because it's not cheap to go to the Cheesecake Factory. Instead of going to a place like that where you've been there a zillion times, try finding a restaurant that's like a more local, organic sort of, or a more high-end restaurant where the chef really cares about the ingredients, because that will be a completely different experience than you would have had at anywhere else. So those are my recommendations. Focus on really tasty, healthy food, and then you sort of realize that all the healthy food is tasty, and that what you used to be eating isn't. But that's a process. And so getting started, I just recommend focusing on quality. Anybody have any thoughts on that? So, okay, so that was a great question. That was a really great question. I love answering questions like that. Let's see here. Let me check the chat room real fast. How you guys doing? Abigail says she pretty much seeks out restaurants like that at any time that she's going to eat out now, because it makes it much more of a treat. Totally. Okay, yeah, great. And James started with 1 meal a day and worked his way toward more meals. The mailman's here, and I'm not going to get it. Okay, I'm going to take one more question. Let's see. What category would beans be in according to the plate? Oh, right. So we were talking about MyPlate, the new USDA food recommendations. And yeah, I'm guessing that they put the beans under protein, which I think is totally weird. So MyPlate that I usually eat, I should probably talk about this. I talked about this in the show I did called My Health Style, but generally I have like a big pile of vegetables on my dinner plate, and I usually have either some beans or some sort of fish or meat or something like that, or both. And sometimes I have some grains. Like my favorite grain is farro, F-A-R-R-O. It's delicious. It's an Italian grain that I like it better than rice or quinoa or any of that. Sometimes I'll use quinoa. I often use nuts or something like crunchy in there. But yeah, I mean, I don't worry too much as long as I have some sort of protein and fat in there either from fish or olive oil, or I don't like, I eat vegetarian a lot actually, mainly because it's cheaper and easier. But if I do eat meat or protein that isn't vegetable based, it's usually fish or something I get at my local butcher. So yeah, it's weird that they aren't clear about what protein is, but I don't know. Was anybody else confused by that? What they said about protein? Okay, here's another good question. Okay, so like vitamin D deficiency, I think, is there anything we should test for that isn't usually tested? That's a really good question, probably, but sadly I don't know the answer. So some people have gotten really into this sort of like personal testing. Like, I don't know if you read Tim Ferriss's new book, The 4-Hour Body. So he's like super into testing like every single little thing. He does, I think it's called a DEXA test, DEXA, and you go to this lab, and I think it's like $200 or $400 or something like that, and you get a full panel of everything. That, you know, your normal doctor would never do that. I mean, my doctor is reluctant to even test my cholesterol. He's like, "Oh, you're young and healthy. Don't worry about it." It's like, really? Like, help me here. So, you know, there might be something, you know, until it makes the headlines, it won't be tested regularly. So the best you can do to sort of get through the confusion is just sort of eat as healthy as you can and hope for the best. But yeah, I agree. It would be nice to have like absolute certainty that you're getting all your bases, but I don't know of a way to do that yet. So cool, great question. This is interesting. What do I think about canola oil? So I know I consider canola oil a processed vegetable oil. I know a lot of people think it's like the devil, like pure evil. Like I think the paleo people feel that way. It's made from rapeseed oil, and I think there's good versions of it and bad versions of it, is what I've been. Like I said, I haven't done a ton of reading on this. I think it tastes sort of neutral and boring, so I don't use it very often. I don't have it any in my house. I use olive oil or butter for pretty much any, or coconut oil for pretty much any fat I use. Except I also have a jar of tea oil, which was just a gift from a friend that I use sometimes. But I don't really see the purpose of canola oil. Does anybody have a purpose for canola oil? I don't like the taste, and I've heard some things that it could be really bad for you. So. Yeah, I wish I had a better answer on that one. I would be happy to talk about it more. If anybody knows about it, feel free to call in and chat with me. I love this question. Thank you, Gavin, for this amazing question. I have this discussion with my boyfriend regularly. So, is the glycemic index list of foods healthy? So, the glycemic index, let me just explain what that is. So basically the glycemic index is a measurement that you can give to any food of how it affects your body when you eat it, specifically how it impacts your blood sugar. So whenever you eat anything, it goes into your body, you digest it, and your stomach acids and digestive enzymes break it down into components, and a lot of the sugar goes into your bloodstream for energy. If you have too much, it'll go into fat storage. That'll result in an insulin increase, and frequently you'll gain weight, or you'll have a better workout. Like basically, that's the function of the blood sugar, and it feeds. Basically, it's the fuel for your body that comes from food. And you know, it's been very popular in the last decade or two. Probably not two, probably 1.5 decades, for people to measure the glycemic index of food and give that as a measurement for how likely it is to make you fat, I guess, because a higher glycemic food is supposed to be something that's going to spike your blood sugar more, and you're more likely to store that extra sugar as fat. The problem with the glycemic index is that people use it to trick you into thinking food is good for you when it's still just total junk food. So I've been talking to my boyfriend about this a lot lately, because he always wants to know, everybody always wants to know, like, how they can cheat the system, and if there are any like power bar style things that they can get that are healthy. And so he told me, he was like, well, this one says low glycemic on it. And And I'm like, well, what does that mean? He's like, well, it's got like 12 grams of sugar, which, by the way, is pretty darn high. 12 grams of sugar is a lot. 15 I'd consider like dessert. So you're like borderline dessert with like a supposedly healthy meal replacement bar or snack bar or whatever. And then, but then I look at the ingredients and it's like the first ingredient is brown rice syrup. The very first one. The first ingredient is sugar. And then like, you know, the next ingredient is like almonds. And then the third ingredient is like evaporated cane sugar. And like basically there were like 4 or 5 kinds of sugar in this bar. And I don't know how, like, I guess they must have done a test and like it must have come out just at the baseline of like what qualifies as a low glycemic index food. But like, it's not health food. It's not, I wouldn't even say it's good for you. It'll likely make you gain weight if you eat it regularly. So anywhere where I see the glycemic index like listed prominently on the label, I'm like highly suspicious. That being said, very healthy foods tend to be lower glycemic, but largely because they're full of fiber, they're full of protein, they're full of healthy fat, they're full of nutrients that help you use your food really well. And so I don't, like, once you have, like, stopped eating processed foods, you don't have to worry about glycemic index anymore. Just put it that way. Like, glycemic index is sort of like a smoke and mirrors to get you to stop paying attention to the fact that what you're eating is, like, basically junk food. So I'm happy to talk more about that, too. It's a complicated topic. This is a good question that applies to me. So James wants to know, is caffeine a concern for loose leaf tea drinkers? I'm curious as I routinely enjoy such tea. Well, James, I also routinely enjoy such tea. Caffeine has never been shown to be bad for you, even at fairly high quantities. It can raise your blood pressure a little bit. It can prevent you from sleeping. It can give some people sort of anxiety sort of effects. Some people are much more sensitive to it than others. But like from a health standpoint, from a, you know, how's this going to affect my long-term blood pressure? I've never seen any data that is bad. Heart disease, if anything, it's better. If anything, it improves your insulin sensitivity and improves your energy levels and increases your metabolism. So all those things are good. There's been tons of studies showing that tea is really good for you, especially green tea. And even coffee is actually really good for you, so long as there's no sugar in it. So I'm a big fan. I personally am pretty sensitive to caffeine, and this will probably haunt me tonight. But it's a fairly low caffeine drink, since it's just a very mild green tea. But generally, I try to keep my tea drinking to before like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If it's coffee, it has to be before noon. Otherwise, I have trouble sleeping. But you know, you can figure out what works best for you in terms of how to manage your caffeine intake. But health-wise, it's perfectly fine. Okay, we got some fun stuff going on. And you guys are welcome to call in too. If you want to call in and chat with me and ask video questions, I'm happy to take those. I thought we already, oh, okay, there it is. Sweet. So another question from Gavin, brown or white sugar? They're pretty much the same. Brown sugar just hasn't been purified one last step. One of the experiments that you do in like beginning organic chemistry lab in college is you turn brown sugar into white sugar. And you just filter out impurities. Basically, they're the same. Their flavor's a little bit different. But in terms of how they impact your body, they're both bad for you. So. This is an interesting question. Can I trust salads from fast food chains or not? I've never actually looked at the ingredients on one, but here is going to be my what I would do if I was evaluating one. So first thing I would do is ask for the dressing on the side. My biggest fear would be that the salad dressing has sugar in it, and I can't imagine they wouldn't. I'm not worried. I'm not worried about the fat in the salad dressing. In fact, it's better. So I wouldn't. I'd almost go with the the creamier ones because they're less likely to have sugar. Although at a fast food place, even those might have sugar. They're going to have a lot of sodium, as someone just pointed out in the comments, but that to me is not that important. The data on sodium isn't very convincing that it's bad for you. Another thing I'm generally just worried about industrial, like when you're dealing with the kind of industrial vegetables at that level, like I don't know if you guys heard that there's like people dying left and right in Germany from like this super scary breed of E. coli. That sort of stuff is bred at industrial farms, and like McDonald's tomatoes and lettuce, it's just a matter of time before someone dies from eating those, in my opinion. So, and you know, it's for the E. coli, and the same thing with their beef. I mean, so it's not like it's just a problem for the salad eaters. I mean, you're putting it yourself at a very high risk of getting contaminated. If in my opinion, if you're eating from McDonald's regularly. Sodium isn't that bad, Kelsey. But staying away from McDonald's in general is a good idea. Kelsey, so someone asked, so someone's talking about sodium in the comments. Pretty much every study that I've ever seen that's condemned sodium, they've done it through, like, you can't separate it out from eating processed junk food. Like, processed junk food has a ton of sodium, and it's easy to be like, it's the sodium that's bad, but people used to say the same thing about fat, and we already know that that's not true. So I need more convincing data, and I haven't seen it. So to summarize on the fast food stuff, fast food salads, I mean, I would be worried about the just possible contamination of eating at restaurants like that in general, just because they're so mass-produced. And I would be worried about sugar in the dressing. Also, I also would, like, if something came with, like, crispy wontons or something like that on it, I wouldn't eat it. I wouldn't. You can if you want. It's just, likely it was fried in trans fat. I've had, usually stuff like that's just bad for you. And I'd just be wary of sugar hidden in the dressing. So, I don't know. It's not a very pleasant topic. So here's an interesting question. So can I substitute white brown sugar with honey, raw cane sugar, or agave? Well, it depends on what you mean by substitute. If you could come hang out in the chat for 1 second. So you can't, I'm pretty sure you can't substitute it in baking. Like if you're trying to make a cake and it calls for a cup of sugar, if you replace it with a cup of honey, I don't think your cake's going to turn out the same. In terms of, is honey better for you? Nah, not really. It's still sugar. You have to understand that. There are some nutritional benefits of honey, but they're going to be minimal. So if you're trying to convince yourself that you're not being unhealthy by eating something that's sweetened with honey, I feel like that's splitting hairs in a way that isn't really actually going to do you any good. Raw cane sugar, same thing. And agave, it's the same thing. Agave is a little bit different because it has a different, slightly different composition. It's more like high fructose corn syrup. It's got more fructose in it. There's been some evidence that might be worse for you than regular sugar. So I don't eat anything with agave in it, personally. Someone asked if sweetened with dried dates or fruit is the same. I think that's a little better, but you still have to understand that you're going to be eating a concentrated form of sugar, and that should be done in limited times in your life. This is going to be way more important for someone looking to lose weight, I should add. Like if you're trying to lose weight, your best bet is to just cut out as much sugar as you can without going crazy. But I don't mind when stuff is sweetened with fruit as much. Because it's going to be bound up a little bit in that fiber. And if that's the case, then it won't digest quite as quickly. But you're still going to be eating some sugar. So my recommendation, I did a whole episode on weight loss like last week. My recommendation for that is to try to, the problem with sugar substitutes, and even ones that don't have calories like sucralose and stevia and stuff like that, the problem with those is that you still are training your body to want sugar. Whereas if you just go cold turkey for a month, which is hard, I mean, it's hard, really hard to do. It's an addiction. But if you can do that, then the cravings go away. And then you can like eat normal food again, and you don't need it to be that like super, super sickly sweet that you're used to. So I recommend dumping that. Yeah, I've got tons of advice on summer tomato on how to kill a sugar addiction. So, yeah, that's if you have more questions on that, browse around on summer tomato. There's tons of stuff there. It's one of my favorite topics. Sweet. So, someone asked me about Snoop Dogg's. So yeah, we saw Snoop Dogg in concert last night. We got backstage, but we didn't get to hang out with Snoop Dogg. But his bouncers were awesome looking, and he's so cool. Snoop Dogg is so cool. It was really cool. I posted a picture on Instagram. If anybody caught it. Is it true that you lose the health benefits of tea when you mix it with milk? I don't think so. It doesn't make sense to me, but maybe. I mean, the only way it would happen, I mean, the health benefits of tea are, they're filled with antioxidants. Caffeine's slightly good for you. And it doesn't have sugar in it, you know, and you could be drinking something with sugar. Milk shouldn't have sugar in it either. I don't know if there's something in the milk that binds up the antioxidants. I've never heard that. But it's possible, but I haven't never heard anything like that. I don't worry about the fat in milk. Some people do. I don't. Almost all the data now shows that there's absolutely no benefit of switching to low-fat dairy products. So that's my take on that. This is an interesting question. So people are hating on olive oil lately. Can you weigh in? Who's hating on olive oil? Tell me more. I've never heard of such a thing. So if you want to call in, that'd be awesome. Love to hear what that means, or elaborate in the chat room. All right. What are some of the signs of juvenile diabetes? So this is type 1 diabetes, I assume you mean. I actually don't know. I've never met anyone with type 1 diabetes. I imagine fatigue and other such things would be a factor because they're going to have issues regulating blood sugar because they cannot produce insulin. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't really know. And I'm going to drop that question because I don't know. So someone's asking about the PAGG stack. I think that was something mentioned. Was that what was mentioned in Tim Ferriss's book in 4 Hour Body? Is that what you're talking about? I forget what all that stuff was. I'm not a big fan of supplements. So here, I'll just put this up. I'm not a big fan of supplements. I don't think that there's nearly enough. They rarely do enough safety data acquisition before like putting these things out in the public, and generally the results of clinical trials are very disheartening in the terms of supplements. But that's like that weightlifting supplement world is like that's like a whole science in and of itself, and I don't really touch that stuff. Like if you're interested in information on things like that, like there are other websites that are going to be much more helpful. To me, that stuff is all super scary. I would never mess around with my body's hormones or anything like that with supplements. But then again, I don't want to be a bodybuilder. If you do want to be a bodybuilder, I'm sure there are people who can help you with that. So, oh, I saw the article on Mark's Daily Apple. I agreed with him on that. So I don't remember the details. I can't go read it right now. I'm doing a show. But someone asked. They said they had iced cappuccino from a local coffee shop the other day, and after drinking it, they felt cold, shaky, and your stomach was bothering you. I also had the feeling that I had to pee a lot. Is it just a lot of sugar and caffeine? Well, I mean, if you're worried about it, if that's something happening to you regularly, you should go to the doctor. Sometimes I get really shaky if I have caffeine on an empty stomach or too much sugar on an empty stomach. So if you hadn't eaten anything, that could have been the problem. I mean, yeah, it's probably a caffeine sensitivity then. So she said it's only a problem when she drinks some big ones. Sweet. Any other questions? My question queue is empties. I'm trying to think if there's any other exciting news. Oh, did you guys watch that basketball game last night? Who are you guys rooting for? I know one of you is rooting for the Heat. I'm not. I'm rooting for Dallas. Krill oil versus fish oil. Arnie, I covered that earlier in the show. I'll be rebroadcasting this in the future. So you can subscribe to my YouTube or to my iTunes to see a copy of this later. Okay, I don't know the answer to krill oil versus fish oil. I mean, in what context? I don't take supplements. I mean, I take vitamin D and multivitamin. I don't know. I'm not a supplement expert. Yeah, on YouTube. So I have, if you search iTunes and you want to subscribe to the podcast, it's Summer Tomato Live. You can just search that. Or my YouTube channel is just my last name, my full name, Daria Pino. So it's YouTube/Daria Pino. And you can find all my fun videos there. It's good times. I just was told that my entire former lab, the Pleasure Lab, is watching. So hi guys, good to see you. I'm on TV. Ask some sciencey questions, you geeks. Come on. So everybody's thinking, stump me with some questions. What else is going on? I'm going to try roasting a chicken this week. Maybe tonight. Pretty exciting, huh? I'm going to try Ruth Reichel's recipe. I don't know, a bunch of people that are on my subscribers list. So basically, if the people who normally get to watch my regular show, they subscribe to a newsletter. It's at the bottom of the screen, tinyletter.com/summertomato. It's a paid newsletter, $3.99 a month. And we have a lot of fun discussions there, and so it's more than just access to the live show. It's, I'm basically like their personal nutritionist. Not everybody wants to hire a nutritionist, but when you want to just like sort of ping someone with a question, like that's what I'm there for. But we're doing a book club for the newsletter, and the first book we're reading it's called Garlic and Sapphires, and it's an autobiography by Ruth Reichel, who is now on board with the Guilt Taste group, which they're doing really cool stuff. If you haven't checked out Guilt Taste, go do it. It's awesome. But she also used to be the editor of Gourmet Magazine, and before that she was a food critic at the New York Times, and before that she was a food critic at the LA Times, and she's an amazing writer, and I'm loving the book. I think we're going to probably have a discussion about it in the next few weeks, so if you guys wanted to join that, you're welcome to. But there's a bunch of recipes in the book, sort of interspersed with the narrative, and I'm going to try a couple. So, starting with the chicken. Let's see. Someone asked, any opinion on the diet effect? Our tomatoes in season now. Let's start there. I saw them on the farmer's market over there. Yeah, I'm getting some good tomatoes right now, actually. And someone says, what are any opinions on diet's effect on back pain management? It's on PBS special, like an infomercial. Or legit, in your opinion? I mean, generally, you can manage, like, inflammation is a big problem in almost every problem that you have. So in heart disease, in Alzheimer's disease, and in pain. And so anything you can do to sort of minimize inflammation is going to be beneficial. So there's a couple, there's lots of ways to do it. So steroids are a good anti-inflammatory. There's also non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, the NSAIDs, and that's going to be your over-the-counter sort of Advils and ibuprofens and aspirins and stuff like that. And then, but there's also a big dietary component of inflammation, and generally sugar exasperates it. Processed grains are sort of the same. I believe fats are beneficial for inflammation. There's a whole literature on anti-inflammatory diets, and I can't imagine that would do anything but help if you're getting chronic pain. I think Monica Reinagel, she's also known as the nutrition diva, she wrote a book on the anti-inflammatory diet. That would probably be your best bet. I don't know what PBS said, but if it was involving inflammation, that's probably worth trying for sure. I mean, it'll make you healthier anyway, so you might as well go for it. This is an interesting question over from Twitter. So my friend Josh Beans over here wants to know, do I think there should be more diversity based on body type, size, age, geolocation versus one-stop shop? Absolutely. It's sad that everybody feels like they need to look like one person. People, beauty comes in many forms, and people love many other kinds of people. Actually, I just read, I'm going to plug my friend's ebook for a second, because it just came out today. Her name's Geek's Dream Girl. So if you go to Geek's Dream Girl, I think that's the website, geeksdreamgirl.com. She basically, she runs a service, so she's a copywriter at ThinkGeek, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of a geek, so I hang out with these crews, and so she's a copywriter at ThinkGeek, which is a really cool place for geeks to hang out online and buy stuff. They have cool geeky products, but she just came out with an ebook today, actually, about, she helps people, geeks, build an online dating profile so they can attract other geeks or even anyone. I mean, even if they're not super geeky, just how to, if your online dating profile is sort of failing and you need help with it, she helps you with that. And so today she released an ebook about how to do that. And she sent it to me in advanced copy and just wanted my opinion on it. I've never done online dating, but I was happy to help her out. And as somebody just is making fun of me. So I read through her book, and it was so touching. She was just talking about how people, there's someone out there for everyone, and she's helped so many clients who are big, small, tall, short, all different kinds of people find the person who loves them for who they are. And so I just thought that was really sweet, and I think that's a really important thing to remember, that you shouldn't try to be someone you're not. You just should try to be healthy and try to be happy, and those should be your goals, not a size 2 or whatever. That's not cool. So check out Geek's Dream Girl. If you need dating help, she'll help you. Anyway, enough with the infomercial. And someone just said that they've never heard the word geek used so much. I'm a little geeky. Sorry. All right, so it looks like we're about time to wrap up. Geeks do need love. See? Good to see that. I knew a few of you would be in here. Anyway, we're coming up on an hour, and I think that's plenty of time for today. So unless you have any last-second questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us. I host office hours every few weeks, and these are sort of open and free to the public. But if you're interested in subscribing to the regular show, Summer Tomato Live, you can read all about it on my website, summertomato.com, and there's a little tab called Live, and that can give you all the info you need. And if you want to sign up, just go to tinyletter.com/summertomato. So thank you guys very much for your attention, and have a lovely day.